Dan and Greta and I, we're getting together to do a very special show for you today. Very, very much off our usual operation, but Dan will explain all that to you.
All right, so I thought we would have a little fun because we're at the end of the year and start of a new year. And I thought it might be fun to do predictions for 2024. So we will each have our little input on various topics that I'm going to throw out and have a little fun with it. And then a year from now, we can look back and see how wrong Bill was and how right Greta was and how I was mostly right, because that's the way it's usually going to work out. What do you say, folks? Sound like a plan?
You're in charge, sir.
All right. First one up. What's the big event next year we all know about? The presidential election. So predictions on who is going to be president come 2025. Let's start with you, Greta. Ladies first.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
I know he's got all this investigation and everything, but honestly, when you go out on the media wire all over America and say, oh, the special attorney or whatever they call special counsel now wants the Twitter accounts of all 84 million of his followers. I don't think most of these so-called special counsels are very serious people, and I don't see a lot of this getting wrapped up before the election. So,
how much do you think he wins by? Landslide, close race?
Well, wait a minute. To do that, you got to tell me who his opponent was.
He didn't ask me for the opponent. He asked me.
That's right.
All right. No, I guess
if he wants us to tell how much the win is, you got to tell us who he's fighting against.
Okay, we'll add that.
They're going to keep propping him up. It's late. Okay, and forever. I mean, we're talking 12 months in politics?
It's an eternity.
A drop in the bucket. That's a split second.
Interesting. All right, Bill, who do you think is going to be president come 2025?
I agree with Greta. It's going to be Trump, and I'm going to predict approximately 305 electoral votes.
Very good.
Pretty good win then.
Yep.
And who's he running against? Because you threw that out there.
Yeah, and I really think he's going to be facing a Biden.
You think it's Biden also?
I just think it's going to be Biden.
Okay. And that's fine. You ready for it?
Ready.
Gelsey, right? Gelbert's going to win this one, right? Go ahead.
Nope, I'm going to go against you. Here we go. So, it's going to be Trump versus Newsom versus, wait for it, Kennedy. And my prediction is this. We are not going to have a president 12 months from now. Kennedy is going to take enough electoral votes away to create chaos. What will happen after that, I don't know. But that's my prediction. What do you think?
I think Trump still wins, and Kennedy takes all the votes away from Biden. I think that's who's going to really be hurt by it.
I don't know if you saw the recent polls with Kennedy. He's polling at 18, 19% right now, a year out. Now, it could go the opposite, right? He could fall off a cliff. But I think he's going to build some momentum. Is he going to win? Let's put it this way. Do I think he has a shot? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. But I think he could take enough away from both of them, electoral vote-wise, to throw a monkey wrench in. Remember, I think this is going to be a lot closer election. I don't think it's going to be 305. I think it's going to be very close. And I think there's enough of a vote swing either way in enough states that we could see chaos. And you know what? I'm kind of hoping we do, because, boy, that would be fun.
Okay, just to follow up on your prediction there, sir.
Go ahead.
The question for all of us. Who's Trump's VP?
Ooh, good one. What do you think, Greta? Kristi Noem. You stole mine. That was going to be mine. What do you think, Bill?
That makes three of us then. That's no fun.
All three of us are going for Noem, and she's not even running for anything. Wow. Who do you think would be, if it's not Noem, who do you think would be the second choice? I'll throw mine out. It starts with tall and ends with C.
I know who you're going to throw out there. What's going to
I
happen?
I think there's a shot. I think if Trump
I
gets,
think, interesting enough, you might see Tim Scott.
I
I
would
agree with.
I would not have a problem with Tim Scott at all. I
I don't
think,
think you're going to see Nikki Haley is not going to be there.
please no, go away.
Um, and I think the rest of them, I think Tim Scott would probably fit into what the needs are right there, right now.
Yep.
And he's a good guy, right? I think he would be a great leader. I think they could groom him by putting him at VP. I do. He's dropped out of the presidential now, and he should have because he wasn't getting anywhere. I think that would be an outstanding choice. But I told you guys before we went on air that I was going to predict some oddball ones just to have a little fun with it, just to get some reactions. All right, next one. We've talked about presidential. We got to talk about Congress, but we're going to talk about the two houses separately. So Senate. Who takes the Senate and by how much? Let's go with Bill to start this one.
Republicans take the Senate by 3 to 4 votes.
All right. Greta?
I'd say the Republicans take the Senate with 2 or 1 or 2.
I think we're going to be pretty much the same as we are now. It's going to be right around 50-50. I could be one vote either way. I think the way it's going to fall. Now, keeping in mind, there's something like 3-1 seats up, Democrat versus
30-some seats out. It's 2 to 1.
2-1. Okay.
Republican.
So in theory, the Republicans should take the Senate because there's more Democratic seats up than Republicans. And
right.
There's a lot more at risk. I mean, setting aside the guaranteed wins of both parties, there's a lot more at risk for the Democrats than the Republicans. That said, as Bill is fond of saying recently, and I've been saying for months, the Republicans have the ability to snatch victory or defeat from the jaws of victory. And I do think it'll be somewhere 50-50, plus minus 1 either way. I don't think for sure either way is going to be determined. What do you think?
Well, the Senate is always a tough one because the guys are in there for what, 6 years?
6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all dug in like ticks, right? But on the other hand, there's some states that are being absolutely swayed in their vote by Mr. Joe Biden and his cabinet. Okay, they're being swayed away, and I mean, Democrats are really helping us in Ohio. Is it Montana that Tester's in, or Bill? Do you know North Dakota?
I don't know on that one. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, so I just
sure.
I just think they're really helping us out here, and I appreciate it.
I think it'll be interesting. I think, to your point, Greta, I think the coattails, as they like to put it, of the candidates could come into play. I also, though, there's enough negative backlash towards Trump that I think that could come into play a little bit also. Will it negate it? Biden's going to lose a lot of votes for the people underneath him in the ticket. I believe.
I don't think the coattails are going to matter so much at the Senate, but I think it may come into play in the House.
Well, now that you've said that, guess where I was going next?
To the House.
We're going to the House. So right now it is Republicans by 5, I believe, 6.
Something in that number.
Where do you think we end up in 2025? Let's go with Greta first this time.
I think roughly the same. I truly do. I think there's arguments on both ends. There's redistricting on both parties. And I don't know. I think Joe Biden has a big old target on his back. And I see a lot of Democrats distancing themselves in the House, very much distancing themselves, and even in the Senate in some cases. So, yeah, about the same.
Bill?
I think you might add a few, and it's all going to be based on the coattails of Trump.
Trump gains them votes?
Trump will carry certain people in to win because they've aligned with him, not because they're good, bad, or indifferent. But I think his coattails are probably one of the only people running now that really has coattails.
Fair point. My opinion is pretty much what Greta said. I think it could go either way. I think it's going to be very close. Much like now, 5, 6, 7
I said I was going to say the same. You said, take a stand there, sir.
Well, I am taking a stand. I think I think the Democrats could take it. but I think it's
Oh,
going to be extremely close. 5 seats either way. I Your point about Trump is valid, but it also is valid the other way too. He's going to cost them some votes in certain states. Remember, every state's different. I think the thing that's coming into play for me is the movement of the population over the last few years, right? Red states have become redder. Look at where we are. North Carolina was a purple state a couple years ago. It's now pretty much red, other than certain cities. I think that drains from New York. So there's going to be less Republican representatives in New York. Yes, there's a pickup in North Carolina, but I think all in all, it's pretty much status quo. Could go either way. That's my opinion.
okay.
What do you guys think?
I think
We already gave
immigration,
everything.
No, I mean
immigration
about what I'm saying.
immigration is going to be a spoiler in this discussion. It really is. It's not just a little US, oh, do we love and hug everybody and let them in argument. Is now a global thing, and you can't get away from it. So I think in certain cases, New Yorkers, like people in California, are going, wait, you're giving all this housing and phones and food and medical care and everything. You won't do anything for me. I think that's going to hurt them. I really do.
Good point.
Interesting point. All right, now let's kind of take it down another notch. So we've talked about federal. Let's jump into states. So there's several governors that'll be up. Several state legislatures will be up. What do you think happens at the state level in general? Do you think it becomes more? I'll give you my opinion to start off. I think we're going to see more polarization. New York, California, as blue as they are going to go bluer. Florida, Texas, as red as they are going to go redder. North Carolina is going to go redder. Those type of things. I think you're going to see a even more polarized country than you see now after this next election as far as representation within the states. What do you guys think?
It depends on which group of states you're talking about, to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about Washington State or Oregon or New York, New England, whatever, you're probably right. But the South and the West are big places. The South and the Southwest, they're big, big places. And they're getting real popular out there. And I think what we have more on our hands to face is a continental divide than anything else. I think you're going to have what will be known as the South in general, which will cover Texas and other places. And then you're going to have the North, and then you're going to have the liberal far left coast. So who knows?
What do you think, Bill?
I think this is all going to be decided on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all things are nice, but people vote by their wallet. If they can look back there and say, I've been screwed over the last 4 years by the Democrats, things are not better, they're actually significantly worse than it was under Trump, then they're going to vote that way. When you start looking at people making a decision whether they put gas in the car or food on the table or heat the house, those are big decisions for them. And they look back and they say, 4 years ago, I was doing pretty good. And in the minority communities, they were doing better than they've ever done, under the Trump administration. So I think all that comes into play. It's the economy.
I think the economy is going to have a huge part in it. I agree with you. If I were a Republican at any level, from dog catcher right up to whoever runs as for president, I'd be stealing Reagan's line. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? They should just take that and post it on every billboard, every advertisement they put on TV, every street sign, because that is I think going to be the definitive issue. They throw out things like abortion. They throw out things like, Israel, Ukraine, all that stuff. The bottom line is it's getting very expensive to feed your family and have a roof over your head. And I do think we've crossed that point where the pain is now greater than most people can handle. So I do think that's going to come into play. You're kind of jumping ahead on topics here. But yes, I agree with you 100%, Bill. So having said that, so we're kind of agreeing, that we're going to see more polarization. To Greta's point, the fracturing, I'll rephrase it a little bit, of the country. What do you think happens in general along those lines? Because that's where I was, one of the things I was going to throw out is, in general, do we see more polarization than we already have now? I think we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on it. What do you guys think on that? Let's go Greta first.
Very Greta.
I absolutely agree with you, Dan. That's thus my mention of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, right now, Ohio. I mean, absolutely. People are pulling up stakes and going, if our government doesn't work for us, then we're just going to throw the bums out and find somebody who will. And that's exactly what they're doing. So, yeah, polarization, more of it.
Bill?
It's going to become worse and worse to the point where people are going to start considering dividing the country by blue and red. You hate to put it that way. We're getting there because nobody's anymore listening to the other side. At this point, the best solution long term may be what similar happened to Russia. I hate to put it that way, but to divide the country up again and let it start again.
The balkanization of America. That's what they term it.
I like that line. Thank you.
Yeah. It's now, do you think it happens in 2024? Or do you think it happens a few years later? As far as I think we're headed for it also. What reasonably do you think, when will it happen, if it happens? I mean, obviously we're speculating, but when do you think we could actually see it happen?
I'll give it to you real simple. It all depends on how the reaction the left has to Trump winning.
You stole my answer, Bill.
You should have asked me first.
Yeah. Greta, what do you think?
Right. He's absolutely right. That's the big one.
I'm going to add to it. I agree with you 100%, Bill, but I think the right's reaction, if Biden wins again, and there's the talk of like what we saw in 2020, where, because we can't talk about it, we'll get banned, but there may or may not have been some issues with the voting. Let's just leave it at that. I think if you see Biden suddenly win 80 million votes again, I could see where you might see a little bit of an uprising from the other side. I think the reason I asked the question is, do I think it'll happen in 2024? I think it entirely depends on the presidential, but it's really going to happen in 2025, right? The election will happen. All hell's going to break loose. After that, I think you may see the total fracturing of the country in 25, 26, somewhere in there. And it scares the hell out of me to even think about it.
We about break time? It sounds like it.
We had about another minute, but go ahead.
Why don't we just take the break now and we'll come back?
All right. Bill wants to take a break. So
and back shortly, and there's several reasons for doing that, and I'll be back in a minute.
We all know what that is. All right, we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Welcome back to Reclaiming America. I'm Greta, and I'm here with the stars of the show, Bill and Dan. And I believe this round, Dan, you're taking it away.
I am, but I want to say that you're the star also. You are the star, Greta. We are your humble assistants.
I think Henry's the star.
Because
she is the North Star.
There you go.
The one that just outshines everyone else.
Yeah. Normally, Greta's the one running the board. I'm covering it today, and I'm failing miserably compared to what she does. But we will manage it. All right. We're doing predictions for 2024 and beyond. We talked about the presidential and most of the elections, but Bill kind of touched on one that I wanted to delve into next, which is the economy. What do you think happens with the economy over the next, let's say, 12 months or so? Just in general, or if there are specifics you want to throw out. Let's go with Bill to start this time.
I think we're going to be seeing a recession. I think you're going to see interest rates continue to either hold or get a bit worse. I do believe that unemployment is going to start going up again. And generally, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be hurt. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to be hurt for them to realize what's going on in this country. And maybe they'll then vote the right way. But unfortunately, I see a recession and the economy just going down the tubes.
Now, I would argue we are already in a recession and have been for a while. They just redefined what a recession is. It used to be 2 quarters of negative growth. We've had that for 2 years now. So they redefined what a recession is. But I hear you, Bill.
Dynamically, they redefined what counts for inflation. You don't count gas, you
Oh,
don't count
amazing.
food, you don't count heating oil, nothing.
Hey,
That doesn't count.
yeah, but we count hot dogs in Turkey now. So, they went down, so we'll count them in. All right, Greta, what's your predictions on the economy? What do you think's going to happen?
I've always believed that the two biggest drivers of slumps and recession are A, interest rates, right? And B, gas, fuel. And it's really hard to get away from that because if housing prices are really high and fuel is higher and you need fuel to move everything around, everything's going to go up. I mean, I just think that is the driver, and I think it's going to get worse. I agree with both of you in terms of recession. I don't know when it's going to formally hit or if it's already formally hit, but it's not going to get better because the Fed just passed a whole series of interest rate hikes, right? And the housing prices and the ability to own a home has now become much, much harder for people. So I don't see this going away anytime soon.
No,
I couldn't agree with you more. My prediction is we haven't even begun to see the worst of it. I think, and I'm going to base it on a couple of things that I've been watching the last couple of weeks. Greta, you mentioned home ownership. If you're looking at our area, so we're in southeastern North Carolina, forget homes. Apartments have been priced out of people's reach.
True.
We are in a service economy here where we are. You're not making $100,000 waiting tables for the most part. Some people are, but for the most part, you're not. Rental rates have skyrocketed to the point the average person, they're now having to get roommates and 3 and 4 people living together in a 2-bedroom apartment to survive. I think you're going to see that escalate even more. Housing itself, buying a house, the average person can no longer do it. It's I look at my house, and the house right next door to me sold a couple of months back for more than double what I paid for it 6 years ago. And then add on, my mortgage is at 2.25 interest rate. They're paying almost 7, they said, and they got a great rate. Now you're seeing 8, 9, 10%. You take a $300,000 house at 10% interest. That's $30,000 a year just in interest. Divide that. That's $2,000 a month in interest before you paid any dime on your principal.
You've doubled their payment.
More than doubled. So I know what
Right.
because I had the conversation with them. He's paying more than double what I pay. And by the way, his taxes are higher because I'm assessed at one rate, he's assessed at another. They'll eventually even that out. And then you look at insurance. So,
Yeah.
you start factoring all these in. I think we are in for, everybody talks about 2008 for the housing crisis. We're gonna look at that as a blip compared to what's coming, in my opinion. The other one, and this may or may not surprise you, is cars. If you actually look at what's happening with the auto sector, it's a disaster right now. The highest repossession rates ever. New car average cost is $50,000. I'm rounding it, but it's about $50,000 with 10% interest rates. So used cars on average, obviously they're cheaper than new cars, but if you look at what they're worth versus what they're selling for, you're underwater if you buy a used car at this point because the dealers aren't dropping the prices because they bought those cars at higher rates. You're going to see that be a struggle, which in turn goes to what Bill's saying. You're going to see layoffs in the auto world. It's coming. I think the economy, we talk about the depression in the 30s. I think they're hiding it. We're already there. If you actually look at the numbers, GDP and all that, taking and counting inflation, all that, it's worse now than it was in the 30s. That's my prediction. I think it's going to get really bad. Any thoughts?
no, I think you said it all. I think, as far as the housing market is concerned, I think we talked about that before. The reality is, if you own a home today that maybe has added a third to the price of it, you want to go to sell it, where you going? You can't buy you do what you made up, you're going to spend to buy somebody else's house. And as you said, the interest rates are far beyond what you had before. So people are not going to be selling their houses very quickly nowadays because there's no place to go.
which again, that people don't understand the drastic effect that has. Because if a house doesn't sell, real estate agents aren't making money. There's all of that subset of people that earn money off of the sale of houses. That's gone. Auto market will be gone.
Loan agencies.
Loan agencies,
Lenders.
banking, all of those, they're all going to be affected. This is going to be dramatic. The other one I'll throw out is food. I was kind of funny. When I
Too
did my,
expensive to throw out, by the way.
what's that?
It's too expensive to throw out.
Now at this point, right? I pretty much buy the same groceries every week. I mean, there's obviously a few things here and there that aren't. But if I look back at what I was spending a year ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago versus now, it's at least 25% higher on an average week. Looking at the numbers now, it's more like 30, 35% higher for the same things. Eggs have gone down, I'll give you that, but they're still 3 times what they were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I bought 5 dozen eggs at Walmart in the spring of 21 for $1.78.
Wow.
Because you can go in, if you do the online order, those orders are in there. You can go back and look at them. A dozen eggs now is more than that. So yes, they're trumpeting. Egg prices have gone down. Biden actually put out a tweet saying that. Well, eggs have gone down. Yes, they have, but they're still 3 times what they were.
Yeah, but the yoke's on you.
If there wasn't for bad jokes, you wouldn't have any jokes at all, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, I think we're all in agreement. The economy is in tough shape, going to get worse, and ultimately, I do think it will affect the elections. Let's switch to something else. I'm going to throw another one out at you. Climate change. So it's been a huge issue. It is going to be a huge issue in the presidential. We all know it. What do you think happens with the public's perception of climate change? Because both sides are going to, you're either for or against it. That's not going to change. I don't see any of that changing. What do you think the general public's perception of climate change goes to? Who wants to jump in first?
I think the public perception is that we keep moving the goalpost and the world keeps ending on a certain day. I'll tell you a very quick story, okay? There was a man in Alexandria, Virginia, where we lived, and he had this SUV. He was Fairfax County policeman. He had an SUV and it was covered in Bible verses and Christian radio stations. And it said that the world was going to end on May 15th of a certain year, right? And we went by his house one day and he had planted tomatoes. And that was the year the world was supposed to end. And my husband, being who he is, could not resist the urge to stop, get out of the car, knock on the guy's door and said, what are you doing? Those tomatoes aren't going to be ready till July. I'm just saying.
I got to golf clap your husband. That was beautiful. That's beautiful. Bill, what do you think?
I think climate change is going to be clobbered by the regular people, because look what they're doing. They're pushing state by state. We got to get rid of gas stoves. We got to get rid of natural gas. And this is what keeps people running. It's the gas in your tank and there's the gas that runs your homes. And, it wasn't too many years ago that natural gas was the solution to everything. We're going to run cars and trucks and buses on it. And now all of a sudden it's the villain. So people are reaching the point where, it's almost like you've lied so often, no one believes you all. And that's where I think they're at. The majority of people are going to tell them where to go and how to get there.
You're kind of going where I was going to go. I think you're going to see a huge blowback against climate change. I think we're already starting to see it. To the points that you made, Bill, a key point, again, I've been studying the auto market. EVs are not selling. There are so many, there's something like hundreds of thousands of them that not are just sitting on dealer lots, but have been there for months. There was one they were showing online. It's been parked since 2022. They're selling it as a new EV. It's 2 years old. It's never left a dealer lot. I think you're going to see a major blowback against it because of the reasons that you guys both mentioned, right? It's like Bill said, natural gas was the savior down the road for years. Now all of a sudden it's evil. I think you're starting to see the backlash now, and I think it's going to expand. The question I have is, does it affect the presidential election at all? Because the Democratic Party is going to go all in on it. We already know that. The Republicans are against it. Do you think it comes into play politically?
Yeah, I think it has to. But again, you're talking about an audience that's going to be better educated than they were the last time because they're being directly affected by it. Nothing changes your perception on anything than being directly affected by it.
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you think, Greta?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, this goes against everything the average person like myself believes in. Americans love their cars and they love their freedom and they love the fact that they can drive to state without a Nazi demanding their papers. Okay. So it just kind of, the EV flies in the face of a lot of that. It's fine if you're a city dweller, but unfortunately, it's the city dwellers and San Francisco, New York, what have you, that make up these rules because they assume we're all that same way, that we don't go anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's where the backlash is going to come, right? Is that, like, for example, if you're trying to go from, let's say, North Carolina to, I don't know, Kansas in an EV, you're not going to make it in a day and a half like you would in a gas powered vehicle.
How do you charge a gas powered vehicle in rural Tennessee?
You mean an electric vehicle?
Or, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
electric
yeah. I
vehicle.
mean, exactly.
How do you do that?
You're taking a risk every time you go that car's gonna die. It's now. Are they building more infrastructure for it? Sure, but it's nowhere near ready. And I'm not against electric cars per se. Like Greta, your point about in the city, all for it. I have a problem with them. They talk about electrifying buses. Go ahead, I don't have a problem with it. Ambulances, I'm not so sure I agree with that one, but or fire trucks, God forbid. But I think you're going to see a backlash against it, and I do think it's going to come into play with the electoral
You
process.
want to get really scary, my friend? They're talking about electrifying the military force.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. So back that Abrams up to an electrical plug it in. How long would that take to charge? It takes 8 to 12 hours to do a car. How many ton tank? 40, 50 ton tank.
60 to 70.
The amount of power that would need to generate. Whew.
You know how you do that though, right? You just call the enemy and you say, hold up, we need 12 hours to recharge the tank, and everybody goes quiet.
That's why they're having the ceasefire calls.
Yes,
We're going to have a
that's all.
ceasefire every week for a week so we can all recharge our vehicles and then go back to fighting.
That's exactly right.
Either that or the enemy might even send you over a plug if they're short money
Exactly.
and help you top
There
off.
you go. There you go. All right, one final topic before we go to break. So it kind of falls in line with that is we're talking about potential changes with climate change and how that's viewed. What about wokeism in general, right? The far left's push to rename everything and redefine everything, and all of that. What do you think happens with that in the next 12 months?
I think I'm going to start on this one because I think they really stepped on it again with the wokeness in Israel and the anti-Semitism that's come out, and it's biting them big time. I mean, you have donors to these major corporations and to these major universities are saying you're not getting a dime from us again. It's over. You're not going to see, and they're having heart attacks. Uh, you were having people say to corporations, if you're one of the people that participated in that with this woke stuff, we're not going to hire you. Put their names out so we know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's scaring the hell out of them. They're going away. Woke is on a downhill slide, whether they like it or not.
Greta?
Bill is 100% correct. Money talks. And when wokeism, and it took a while, I grant you, it did take a while before corporations woke up and said, oh, I guess I shouldn't do this anymore. But now it's picked up steam, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the universities and the riots and everything else, it's picked up an awful lot of steam. There were a lot of bad things happening out there that either they didn't know or they didn't want to know. And now it's in their face. So, yeah, wokeism is on a nice, long, slow decline. Too slow for me, but I'll take a decline.
Interesting. You think it's going to be a slow decline?
I do.
I think it's going to be a very quick slope. I think it is definitely declining. There's no question. I'm in agreement with you on that. But I think the blowback is coming hard and fast. And I'll give you two examples that I can go on. Where I'm from originally, which is Albany, New York, there was a college called College of St. Rose. Been around for 100 years. It's closing. They're broke. That tells you something right there, right? They were as left woke as you could be. Nobody's going there anymore. The other one that I think we're starting to see is look at Disney. So as we're filming this, Disney just released their latest earnings and all that. The value of their shares is roughly a third of what it was, third to half. And they're now going, no mas, we're good. We're not going to do this anymore. We'll see. I think that's just bluster.
You know, I
But
think he's lying through his teeth, but you're absolutely right. He's up there saying, we're going to entertain no longer and we're going to get away from this stuff and go back to what we used to do because they're getting clobbered.
and then you see somebody like Elon who came out and told them to go F themselves when they said they were going to pull their advertising from him. I think the decline has already started. I think it started earlier this year with the Bud Light and all of that. I think it's going to keep accelerating. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, is what's going to happen generally in the world at that point, because those on the far left are not going to handle it well. They need their little safe spaces. If you misgender them, what's going to happen when they realize that everything they stand for is falling apart and they're going to get put in their place? I think on that note, it's a good time to take a break.
Well, I would close that with one thought on it then.
All right, go ahead.
To show all them going crazy and getting for their safe spouses is they'll probably have to go to the shelters and pick up some safety dogs to protect them, and we can take care of the animal population.
There's an interesting point. The cats save the cats. All right, on that note, we're going to jump away for a couple minutes, take a break, and then we're going to come back with some more predictions for 2024.
Welcome back to a special edition of Reclaiming America, where we're taking a chance with the three of us are predicting what's going to happen in 2024. And the best part of this is a year later when we find out how right or wrong we were. Anyway, Dan's question man today, so let's go back to him.
You know what the sad part is? We've agreed on everything. We're supposed to disagree a little bit for entertainment purposes, but for the most part, we've been in agreement, which I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. All right, another one we talked about recently on the show was AI and how its usage is growing and where it might end up. So I thought it would be a good topic to throw out for discussion. What do you think happens regarding AI over the next 12 months or so? Bill?
I think AI is going to run into some problems because people are going to be more and more concerned that these machines, or whatever you want to call them, will outthink us and outplay us and become a danger to us. There are numerous sci-fi movies out there where that's happened. What scares me in a number of areas, because we've got some scientists around the world that are trying to see what happens when they insert to AI operation brain cells from human beings. Now, I don't know how that's going to play one way or the other, but it does frighten me. So I think you're going to see more and more people getting upset by it, and you're probably going to see attempts by governments to try and control it.
Greta?
Oh, I think it's going to stumble out of the gate over the next 12 months. But I also think it's been in medical use for quite a while, and it has a wonderful place in being able to look at something very logically, without emotion or ego or anything else. So it is good in the medical field, but I don't think it's ready for prime time. And as a matter of fact, if we tried to push it into prime time right now, I think it would come back to bite us.
You mean something like the virus?
Yes.
Shush, careful, Bill. Careful, Bill.
I'm going to get in trouble.
He means the computer virus. Yeah,
okay.
The computer virus. I have a little different opinion.
Anyway.
Yeah, I have a little different opinion. I think AI usage is going to explode in the next 12 months. And all your points that you've made are absolutely valid. I think, however, seeing what I've seen, I use AI. I use ChatGPT a lot. For various things. It's got some wonderful uses, to Greta's point. It's also extremely dangerous, to Bill's point, keeping in mind that even though it is an artificial intelligence, it is programmed by human beings, and those human beings tend to reside near Palo Alto, California, and they are ingraining into AI's thought process their political leanings, and it is obvious when you use AI.
If they're not in China.
China also, but like the primaries are at China runs San Francisco. We know that. They just cleaned up San Francisco for the Chinese leader. But when you go in and use things like ChatGPT, and I like to play with it and break it, and you say, give me 10 positive things about Trump, and it says, well, I don't go into that, and then give me 10 things about Biden, and it rattles them off like nothing. I do think its usage is going to significantly increase. Where you're going to see it is in things like the media to write stories. You're going to see it's going to have an effect on that.
Did you see the Sports Illustrated thing this week?
I did.
I'll give you that feed. Give it right back to you.
Yep. I think you're going to see all of that happening, right? You're going to see more of it. Now, to what your points were about the negative about it, I do think you're going to see increased awareness of that. And I think the government will step in? I actually don't. I think you got to remember who runs AI is the same people that run things like Meta, Google, and all them, and they have a lot of money and they give it to the politicians for all their talk about controlling. They're doing investigations next spring, congressional investigations into Facebook and all them for what they do with kids' data. How many times have they already done it? They never do a damn thing.
Except AI is a threat to the politicians.
Is it though? How so?
Because AI can actually take over and run the place, and they become even more superfluous than they are now.
You think Skynet's coming, huh?
I think HAL is already here.
In some respects, it is. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's going to be longer before that happens.
And the fun thing is going to be as more and more college kids fall into this, and high school kids, and all their papers are generated through AI. How do the professors figure that out?
What do you think they do?
I would think they go back and try to find the same thing and ask the same questions and see if they're getting a duplicate copy. But
well, I know you don't use AI that much, but you can manipulate, and you can ask it, write me a paper on existentialism or whatever, or just pick any topic, and then it'll write it. And then you could say, no, I don't like that. Write me another one, and it'll write a completely different one. It has that ability already. There'll be some similarities, but it'll be enough different that you wouldn't know.
I needed this when I went to college.
We all did. But it'll be interesting. I do agree with you in the sense that they will put controls on it. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 12 months. I think you're a couple of years out before that happens. Just my 2 cents. All right, let's switch to a different topic. That was a good one. Next one I want to talk about is one we've talked about on the show many times, which is the global crises that are happening, Ukraine, Israel, and all them. What do you think happens along those lines in the next 12 months? Do we end up at war or in a conflict of some sort? And if so, what do you think it'll look like? How about Greta first?
I think if there is massive conflict, I think we're going to get terribly embarrassed. We're going to look terribly weak. And I personally don't feel safe any longer. And I know a lot of other people don't. So yeah, there may very well be a big global blow up. Of course, I've been predicting that for several years, but why waste the money, China or Russia or anybody else, when you've got a U.S. government that's doing your job for you, essentially, right? Businesses and government.
It's a very good point. Bill?
I think you're going to see within the next 12 months a move by China on Taiwan. Mm-hmm. You might see some sort of threats coming out of North Korea to South Korea, maybe even Japan. That's also a possibility. And there's nothing that's going to stop them. As far as we're going to get into conflict, we will not get into anything. We'll rattle our sabers and we'll run back and forth, and then we'll find a reason not to do it. And as long as we take that stand and they know we're not going to do it, the world is a much more dangerous place than it was just 4 years ago. And I agree with Greta. I'm afraid for myself, my family, and the kids and generations behind us.
I agree with both of you and slightly disagree. I do think we're going to be in some sort of conflict in the next 12 months. Could it be Taiwan? Yes. Do I think we'll be directly involved? Yes, I do. And to Greta's point, I think we're going to end up looking pretty bad if we do. Do I think it'll be a world war at this point? I don't know. It's the presidential election's in the middle of it. That's the thing, right? If we're looking 12 months out, it's right in the middle of a presidential. If China's going to move on Taiwan, they're going to do it next year because they
We're
want
going to do it before Trump gets back in office.
Right, because their fear is Trump would win. If, let's say they do it in August, just to pick a month, and that conflict's not going to be over in days. It's going to be going on while the election's happening. Then Trump wins. What does Trump do? Because we don't know. One of his things that he kept people in line is they never knew what he was going to do. He might pull us out. He might go all in. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do think we'll be in a conflict. I do think it's not going to go well for us initially, at least. Long term, I kind of look at it like World War II. It may coalesce the country enough that we come together and,
It's even frightened the Democrats in running the Congress at this point, because they're actually reaching out to soldiers that they forced out of the military over that thing we can't talk about because we get banned. and when they didn't get that thing in the arm we can't talk about because we get banned, they were given a choice to leave, and they put things in their records that would not allow them to come back. And now they're so concerned, they're reaching out to these same people and saying, come on back and we'll fix your records, and you don't have to take that thing in the arm that we can't talk about because you'll get banned.
It'll be interesting. I agree with you, Bill. I think, in a manner of speaking, I think they're almost lining it up for that reason. Keep in mind, who makes a ton of money if we go to war? Politicians, right? Don't think they're not raking it in over Israel.
The military-industrial complex.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, has shifted from Republican to the Democratic side.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's happened. The anti-war people are now pro-war. If you went back, say, 2 years ago, would you have ever predicted that? Not a chance.
Not at all.
Not a chance. All right. We have about a minute left. Any final thoughts on what's going to happen in 2024 to close it out? You got about 30 seconds each. Greta, you first.
I'm going to get a year older.
Well done. It's about the only thing you can say for certain, right? Bill?
The show is going to catch on with such popularity, we're going to become stars.
Well, I already am a star, so I'll leave that at that. Because Greta said so.
Okay, I was going to think, because in astronomy, is it a black hole a star?
It wasn't me saying it. It was Greta that said it. So
I'm sorry.
This has been a lot of fun. We are going to save this show. And then a year from now, we will come back and revisit our predictions. It'll be a lot of fun to do that.
There'll be a couple of shows that we put together to play what we said, and then
our next predictions after that. I think the final thought I have on 2024 is all hell's about to break loose, my friends. I think what 2020 was is nothing compared to what's coming. We may end up better off. We may end up worse off. I don't know. But I think we're in for a bunch of chaos over the next 12 months. That's my final thought. On that note, it's time to wrap things up. We have had an amazing year. So I want to thank both of you personally for letting me be part of your little team. I want to really shout out to Greta, because normally she's the one behind the scenes that does 90% of the work to make this show run. Bill and I just sit there and try and look pretty, but we fail miserably. So shout out to you, Greta, and a thank you to you. And to you as well, Bill. For all
in 2024, Greta, we're going to double your salary.
Gosh. Yeah.
I think she should get triple, Bill.
Okay, she gets 3 days.
We'll give her 3 times. So anyway, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Hey, everybody, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you follow us. 2024 is going to be a big year for a lot of things, and we're going to be the ones to kind of talk about it and bring awareness to everything. So on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up, and you all have a great week, month, year, and we'll see you next time on Reclaiming America.